Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson, Chapter 24. Beelzebub's Flight to the Planet Earth for the 5th time. Beelzebub continued to relate as follows. After my 4th sojourn on the surface of the planet Earth, many years again passed. During these years, I, of course, as before, sometimes attentively observed through my Tescaano the being existence of these favorites of yours. During this time, their number considerably increased, and they had already populated almost all the large and small terra firma parts of the surface of this planet of yours. And of course there also continued to proceed among them their chief particularity. Namely, from time to time they destroyed each other's existence. During this time, that is to say between my 4th and 5th visits, great changes occurred to the surface of your planet. Many changes also occurred there, in the concentrations of the places of settlement of these favorites of yours. For example, all those centers of culture of theirs on the continent Ashark, where I had been in person during my previous descents upon the earth, namely the countries of Tikliamish and Marau Plesi, had by the time of my 5th arrival there entirely ceased to exist. The cause of the destruction of these centers of culture of theirs, and of the changes on the surface of this planet in general, was again a misfortune, the 3rd for this ill-fated planet. This 3rd misfortune was entirely of a local character and occurred because during several years there had proceeded in its atmosphere unprecedented what are called accelerated displacements of the parts of the atmosphere, or as your favorites there would say, great winds. The cause of these abnormal displacements of great winds at that time was once again those 2 fragments which had been separated from this planet of yours during the first great calamity, and which afterwards became independent small planets of this solar system and are now called Moon and Anulios. Strictly speaking, the main cause of this terrestrial misfortune was only the larger of these separated parts, namely the Moon. The smaller fragment, Anulios, played no part in it whatsoever. The accelerated displacements in the Earth's atmosphere resulted from the following. When the atmosphere on the small, accidentally arisen planet Moon had been finally formed, and the Moon, according to the already mentioned law of catching up, continued to fall back upon its fundamental mass by the path already then established, and this newly arisen definite presence on the Moon had not yet acquired its own harmony within the common system harmony of movement, then the what is called Osmualnian friction, which was, so to say, not harmonized with the whole, evoked in the atmosphere of the Earth the mentioned accelerated displacements of great winds. These unprecedented great winds then began, by the force of their currents, as it is said, to wear down the elevated terra firma parts and to fill up the corresponding depressions. Such depressions were also the 2 countries of the continent Ashark, upon which the process of existence was chiefly concentrated of the 2nd and 3rd groups of beings of contemporary Asia, that is to say, the main parts of the country Tikliamish and Marau Plesi. At the same time, sands also filled up certain parts of the country Pearl Land, as well as that country in the middle of the continent Gorabonsi, where, as I've already told you, there was formed, after the loss of Atlantis, what they called the leading center of culture for all the 3-brained beings there, a country which at that time was the most flourishing part of the surface of this planet of yours, and which is now the desert called Sahara. Bear in mind also that during the abnormal winds of that time, besides the countries mentioned, several other smallish terra firma spaces of the surface of that hapless planet were also covered by sands. It is interesting to note here that your contemporary favorites have also, by some means or other, learned about the changes that then occurred in the places of the permanent existence of the three-brained beings. And having made a label for this as well, this time the great transmigration of races, they stuck it on to what they call their knowledge. A number of the learned beings there now puff and blow with all their might to find out why and how it all occurred, so that they can tell everybody else about it. Just now there are several theories about the matter there, which, although they have nothing in common with each other, and are each, in an objective sense, more absurd than the other, are nevertheless accepted there by what is called official knowledge. But in fact, the real cause of the transmigration of the three-centered beings there was that as soon as the said abrasion began, the beings living on the continent Ashark, fearing to be buried by the sands, began moving to other more or less secure places. And these migrations of the three-brained beings there proceeded in the following order. Most of the three-brained beings populating Tikliamish moved to the south of the same continent, Ashark, to the country which was later called Persia, and the rest moved north and settled in those regions which were afterwards called Kerkischeri. As for the beings populating the country Maral Plesi, one part wandered eastwards, while the rest, the major part, went towards the west. Having crossed the eastern heights, those who went east settled on the shores of the large Saliakuriapnian spaces, and this country was later called China. And that part of the beings of Maral Plesi who sought safety by moving to the west, after wandering from place to place, ultimately reached the neighboring continent later called Europe. And the three-brained beings who then still existed in the middle of the continent Kropansi dispersed over the whole of the surface. And so, my boy, this fifth descent of mine in person to your planet belongs to the period of the time after this said redistribution of the groups of the communities of these favorites of yours. And the causes of my descent there in person were the following events. I must first tell you that the chief peculiarity of the psyche of your favorites, namely the periodic need to destroy the existence of others like oneself, interested me more and more with every succeeding century of theirs, and side by side with it, the irresistible desire increased in me to find out the exact causes of a particularity so phenomenal for three-brained beings. And so, my boy, in order to have more material for elucidating this question which interested me so intensely, I, in the interval between my fourth and fifth sojourn on the planet Earth, organized my observations through the Tescahuano from the planet Mars of the existence of those peculiar three-brained beings in the following way. I deliberately kept under observation quite a number of